Welcome back. When Governor Whitmer said this past week we are being overwhelmed by the coronavirus, she wasn't talking specifically about the schools of Michigan, but you can imagine the overwhelming decisions having to be made again by superintendents all over the state. And joining me now, superintendents from 2 districts going to all virtual learning. From the Troy district, there on the left, Dr. Richard Mashesky, and on the right, Dr. Nikolai Vitti of the Detroit Public Schools Community District. And they just made their announcement this past week and heading back starting tomorrow, which is Monday. And Dr. Vitti, let me start with you. This has to be a sort of a painful moment to come to, for both of you. Tell me a little bit about at what point you realized that you got no choice.
Yeah, it was a painful decision to make. Obviously, you would have to be living under a rock not to know that myself, the school board, and the district from the summer was advocating for in-person learning because we knew just the unique needs of our parents necessitated an in-person option. We were never interested in imposing an in-person learning option for our children, but that our parents and students would at least have the option. And 10,000 students took that option, whether it was face-to-face learning or our learning centers that we ran in all of our buildings, over 100 of them over the last 2 months. But, you know, we said we were going to use science and data to determine if it was safe for schools to open. And consistent with that, we said we would use the same criterion to decide if they needed to be closed. And last week, the city announced that its infection rate was at about 4.8%. That was the latter part of last week. And every day as I monitored the numbers, they were increasing. And I know today is usually the day that the data is announced for the week. I anticipated it being at 6% or higher. We said anywhere from 5 to 7% would be our trigger to have a conversation if it was safe enough. And with it at being anywhere from 5 or 6% in the city, we just feel like right now it's too unsafe to continue with in-person learning. And we announced the suspension of in-person learning effective today. We're going to leave the learning centers open on Monday as a courtesy for parents that couldn't readjust their an educational time for parents over the weekend. But we feel like this is the right thing to do. And with everyone moving into the holidays and interaction probably increasing, there's no sign here that the numbers are going to go down. We still don't have a national COVID safety strategy. And with the legislature and the Supreme Court at the state level stripping the governor of her executive orders, I just don't see how these numbers turn to being more positive, and that's why we made the decision that we made.
And you've said that that will be until at least January 11th, looking into the next year. Dr. Mashesky, tell me a little bit about the calculus that you made in Troy. I've got a friend who's got high schoolers. I think she got all of 2 days of in-person learning before they were headed back home. Tell me a little bit about the way that you've made the decision and your outlook.
Yeah, we had decided to start transitioning our students back in at the end of September. Felt really good about where we were, but to Dr. Vitti's point, as we saw those numbers continuing to rise, we were watching them very, very carefully. 2 things really came to mind for us: the increased number of cases within our buildings amongst students and staff. Because those numbers continue to rise, we were quarantining students and staff alike. And at the county level, when the Department of Health and Human Services pushed Oakland County to a risk level E, which is the highest risk level, with increased cases, that risk level E, we didn't see any scenario wherein it made sense in terms of safety for both staff, students, and all of our support staff as well, and our entire community, where we could keep students and remaining in in-seat instruction. So at that time, beginning this current Monday, we dialed back to virtual instruction.
I want to let you both weigh in on something that you may not be able to answer yet. We may be too close to this, but are you convinced that even learning at home, that our kids are being well served, or is there just no getting around the fact that this is a poor substitute for the way that our kids and our systems are built? Dr. Mashesky, let me start with you. Can we get kids the same quality education when they can't be in the building?
Well, there is no substitute for face-to-face instruction with a highly qualified teacher and students in the classroom. I don't believe virtual instruction is a suitable alternative. It is the best that we have at this point in time, and we're making the best of it, just like our counterparts are across Michigan. We're doing the absolute best we can to meet the needs of students. But at the end of the day, we recognize it's important for both socially, emotionally, as well as in terms of achievement for students to have them face-to-face with their teachers. Students are by nature, schools are by nature social places, and they're places where kids thrive, and they're places where our teachers do their very best work. So we need to continue to do everything we can to get them back face-to-face as quickly as possible.
Dr. Vitti, I assume you agree with what you've just heard. Is there anything we can do to try and keep this from being a disaster in the long term?
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't say anything differently. I would say that, yeah, certainly there's a small number of students that I think probably prefer online learning to face-to-face, and a small group of teachers that prefer it, but certainly not the majority. And I don't think any educator would say that online learning is superior to face-to-face instruction. But for some, I think it's an educational process that makes more sense for them based on their learning needs, but certainly not at scale. I'm just hopeful that our numbers can come down at least by around that 5% level and stay there, so we can reopen our learning centers. We won't open up in-person learning again until after January 11th, and our numbers would have to go below 5% and stay there. But at least I would like to open up the learning centers again, because for a lot of our parents that are managing jobs during the day, lack of childcare, it's really hard to support their children at home, but the numbers are just too high to do that right now.
And Dr. Mashesky, you too, talk a little bit about the burden this is putting on parents.
Oh yeah, without question. I'm fortunate to be the father of four. They're older. I can't imagine what our parents are going through, having to supervise their students through their learning, as well as, and in many cases, do their own work. And so we feel deeply for our parents. And want to do everything we can to continue to provide support for them. And so in Troy, we're providing opportunities for emergent child care for our families, those that want to take advantage of it. But it goes back to, as a community, we need to come together and do everything we can to draw these numbers down so that we can get our kids back in school. It's better for our students, and ultimately it's better for our parents and our families in general. Dr.
Vitti, I've only got about 30 seconds left, but I wanted to let you talk about whether or not, what kind of trouble you might expect or unrest. You had kind of a rocky summer with, we saw some protesting, we saw some hassle around some of the buses. What are you expecting the reaction to be this time?
Well, after opening up schools for in-person learning in the fall, our employees did a wonderful job of containing the virus, where we only had 3 outbreaks, and that's outstanding compared to what happened throughout the state. And when I made the difficult announcement of suspending in-person learning just now, I heard from quite a few parents that said they didn't love the decision, but they understood it. And I think we've come a long way as a district for our parents to trust the difficult decisions that we have to make, and that we're making decisions based on the safety of our children and our employees. And I think the decision to open and now the decision to suspend and the reaction is a testament of building that trust.
I don't envy either of you the decisions you're having to make. Dr. Vitti, Dr. Mashesky, thank you both so much for the time today. Good luck the rest of the way. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We'll wrap things up on Flashpoint right after this.